start bringing.
Okay, good evening, everyone. It's Monday, September 16th, 2024, 6 p.m. I'm calling the Committee of the Whole meeting of the Groton Board of Education to order. Our first order of business is to review the September 9th meeting minutes.
So moved.
Here a second. Anyone have any discussion about the meeting minutes from September 9th?
Oh, yes, I do. I'm sorry. So I'm just kind of messing. If someone else wants to go, I just didn't have time to raise my hand. Just got to the computer. So the discussion of the data section, the data presentation. The section only mentions Matt Schulman's discussion point, but there's a number of members that had discussion points. And so, well, I think it was great that, there's a synopsis and a paraphrase of Matt's comments. I mean, are we gonna have a paraphrase for everyone in there that spoke on it, or nobody? I guess I would just ask for some
I'll ask
consistency.
Joyce to look at the video so that she can add to that. I don't know how many discussion points there were. Sometimes we don't put them all in there, but I definitely see what you're saying about more than one. So I'll have her listen to the tape.
Right, yeah, exactly. I appreciate that. That'd be good to have a bit of a revision there, just to kind of add some simple paraphrase of everyone that had something to say about it, because
Okay.
if memory serves, there's about like at least 4 or 5 people that chimed in. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is the time, our adjournment time correct? For some reason, I felt like we were longer than 7:30. I don't recall.
That was the first meeting ended and the second meeting began.
Oh,
Two separate meetings.
okay. I thought
Yeah,
we
so
just
have to do minutes for each meeting. One was a COW and one was a special meeting.
got it. Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
All right. So we will go ahead then and review the tape on those. We don't actually vote on COW, so consider that the review. The next item is
Clarification,
review the climate survey.
point of clarification. Does that mean that this will come back to us?
Right.
For.
Yeah, we'll review it
Thank you very
again.
much.
Yep. All right, so before we continue with the climate survey, there were some discussions at last year's meeting and maybe even previous years about the use of climate survey data. And there was some discussion that the unions had some opinions about the use of the data. And so we reached out. So far, we got one response from the GEA, so I'm just going to read that into the record. As you begin work looking at the climate surveys from spring 2024, GEA wishes to express that our membership has participated in this survey in good faith to continuously improve support for teachers and to prioritize their safety and mental health. We urge the members of the board and the public to not politicize this data, as we shared our thoughts with central office administrators and building administrators. Sincerely, Beth Horler and Rebecca Giuliani, Groton Education Association. All right, and with that, if we'd like to present the climate survey data.
I know Peter was also going to do it, so I just reminded him he was going to put a statement together too.
Okay.
From them.
Jay, at the point that you think it's appropriate, I'd like to respond to the heart, what I perceive as the essence of the letter. It doesn't need to be now.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Chairman. So this evening, Lauren Cassini and I are going to work together to share the results of last year's school climate survey data. The survey was administered in April, May of 2024. And it was administered to all staff, certified and non-certified. I'd like to just give you a brief overview on how the survey came to be. The survey is something that we develop through a district-wide committee. The committee is called the Groton Safe School Climate Committee. And we have representation from every school, teachers and administrators. We don't have any non-certified staff on the committee, but that's something we'll be looking to add this year. And we go through and we look at the questions. The committee members go back to the building. They meet with their school improvement team, and they share the questions with their school improvement team. And then they come back to the committee with suggestions. So it's a group effort, to put it, to summarize. So I wanted to share that with you. We also share with them this presentation so that they can see, the results of the survey in terms of district trends and the responses from all of those that completed it in the spring. So we'll be doing that at our first meeting this year. The results, the principals and their district or their school improvement teams will use the results to establish building or school goals. So when they present to you on their state testing results, they'll also present a goal related to school climate. And sometimes they will write their own professional goals around school climate. Obviously, that's something that, that everyone chooses individually, but we do have school goals that are created around the data. One we'll talk about tonight. One school last year, for example, were not pleased with the results that their students responded in terms of having a trusted adult in the school to go to. And they really focused on that last year, and their results indicate that they made significant gains with their students in terms of their students now having a trusted adult that they could go to if they were sad, worried, or upset. So just as an example. And then lastly, before we get started, I'd like to share with you some recent legislation that's come down from the state level. The state is organizing a committee. It's kind of long-winded. It's the Social and Emotional Learning and School Climate Advisory Collaborative, shortened as the Collaborative. And this collaborative is working on school climate survey standards. And the school climate survey standards will include a model school climate improvement plan. We will also be working with the collaborative and CABE to have a model school climate policy. The new policy will comply with the national school climate standards. And boards of ed must adopt this new policy by the 25-26 school year. So there's been a lot of work on the federal level related to school climate, obviously, in response to concerns that students are experiencing, and we're hearing staff share about the mental health of our students. So that's something that we want to be on your radar, because this may be the last year that we administer our own survey. Once the model survey is out, we may very well move towards that survey because it's aligned with the national climate standards. And we'll be coming back also with a model policy for school climate. So I wanted to share that with you. And then lastly, I wanted to share with you that as this trickles down from the federal government, the State Department of Ed is also appointing a State Department of Ed Director of School Climate Improvement. And that director will work with the collaborative to put in place the policy, the standards, and the model climate survey. And as a result, districts will be required beginning July 1, 2025 to adopt or appoint a school climate specialist for each school and a school climate coordinator for each district. We will also be required to develop a school climate improvement plan. So a lot of work being done on the school climate front, and we will keep you posted on that, but we wanted you to have that information before we go into our presentation tonight. Any questions? Okay, Lauren's going to start us off.
Okay, so just a quick overview of the surveys, who participated in them, what were the results of that, how many actually completed the survey. So you'll see at the elementary level, we had three different types of surveys that went out within the building. We had an early elementary survey that went out to our students in kindergarten through grade 2. We had an upper elementary survey that was grades 3 through 5. And then we had a staff survey. Okay, you can see on the right-hand side, the elementary surveys completed. So of our K2 students, 744 students completed the survey, which comes to be 72% of our early childhood population, our K2 students. For our grade 3 through 5 students, 775 students participated in the survey and completed it, and that's 84%. And our staff survey, 282 staff members, certified and non-certified, completed the survey, and that's 51% of our staff completed it at the elementary level. At the secondary level, we had our students and our staff, and so that's grades 6 through 12. In our students, we had 1,119 students. That comes out to 60% of the students completed the survey. And our staff, 158 staff members between grades 6 and 12 completed the survey, and that's 31%. We do recognize that this is obviously an area that needs to be improved. We need to get greater involvement and engagement in completing the survey.
We even talked about it as like the end of a faculty meeting, giving them time to fill in the survey so that we, would know that it was getting done instead of their own time.
Would you be able at your convenience to get those numbers and percentages to the board? I think that'd be very useful to look at.
Yes, so there were a couple of updates that we did make as we were going through, and together as a team, we decided that there was some missing information that would be helpful to you. So this will be sent out in the board notes, the update.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yep. And so when we look outside of the actual building, our elementary parents, 466 parents completed the survey, the elementary level, and at the secondary level, 179 parents completed the survey. And again, we are looking for ways to improve this engagement, and already thinking ahead to how do we tap into Parent Square, which has been a big success for us, in terms of upping that engagement with parents on other surveys. So we're looking to maybe tap into that more for next year as well.
At the elementary, I think they have a little more success because they have spring conferences and most parents attend. So they have stations set up where parents actually get on and, do the survey, and they're encouraged to do it. Secondary, middle school has the conference, but high school does not have a spring conference. So I think it's a little harder to get that. But I think a Parent Square going out might help support that.
Do we have any percentages on that?
So no, the long and the short is no, I do not, for the simple reason that I don't think it would be an accurate reflection to give you. And so I was hesitant to do that because there are a lot of variables that play into that. The number of parents that may complete the survey, was there one parent, were there two parents that completed the survey? Did they complete it for more than one child in the elementary level? So it skews the information. When we look in Power School, I could collect who the child lives with, who has custody. So there's lots of different things I could collect, but it's never going to give me like a true reading. And so I didn't think that was right to put a percentage up there, to be quite honest.
We can tell by the number, though, we want to do better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't have the
Yeah.
engagement
Right.
for sure.
So could two parents respond for one student?
Mhm.
Sure.
All right, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you could have
And-
the one parent respond for 4 children.
Right. And because it's anonymous, there's no way to track necessarily who's
Yeah, who's who.
actually, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
right.
so I thought it was only right to just keep those percentages off. Just for your frame of reference, so that you have an understanding of what the survey could look like at the elementary level. On the left, you'll see that, you know, we tried to keep it, or the committee, I should say, tried to keep it developmentally appropriate. So thumbs up, thumbs down, things that they could easily identify with as they read the question or they read the question. Whereas the adults and the secondary students had more options, yes, no, strongly agree, strongly disagree. So it was more the dials versus like a thumbs up, thumbs down. And so we tried to group these into 4 main categories because that's what the survey really does cover. And the first is safety. And so when we look at safety, I'm going to try to orient you to this. And again, there is some new information on here just to help you digest it. So this will be included in the updates to the board. At the elementary level, we looked at the safety. How do students feel in the classroom? And we asked, the committee chose to ask them questions like the classroom, the playground, the cafeteria. And we just felt that the best one to focus in on at this point would be the classroom. How do they feel when they're in class? And our early elementary students, 84% of them answered in a positive way, saying yes, they feel safe in the classroom. This is an increase from 83% noted by the arrows on the bottom of the screen. Just to kind of help you orient that, and for a quick glance, at our upper elementary level, 63% felt that yes, they felt safe in the classroom. So that was a positive result. That was actually down from 65%. So there was a little dip in that.
Do
We
we,
like to compare them year to year. So if we start new, fresh next year, we might end up with a better survey. But, and then going forward, we can do that comparison.
without going into individual students or teachers or parents' comments, with more than 1 in 3 students purportedly suggesting a negative response, do we know what's driving that negative response? Have we been able to tease that out? If you don't think this is the moment to go into it, that's fine, but do we have any sense of what issue or issues are driving this?
I want to defer to Denise because I am not a part
Fine.
of the actual committee. However, we do
Don't they
not
say
ask
safe in the
comments.
bathroom, safe on the playground.
We didn't ask, for that question, we didn't ask them to explain if it was no, but this is similar to what we saw last year. And last year we saw, as you can see from Lauren's arrows, last year we felt that with the upper elementary school students, they're a little bit more savvy and more aware of events happening in their community and in the world around them. And so when we talk about feeling safe in their classroom, the older students, I think, take more into consideration when they're answering that question than the younger students.
It's a developmental issue.
It could be.
Mhm.
All right, so I'm going to recognize Ian and then Jen.
Thank you. Yeah, so my question, basically just, building, I was gonna save this to the end, but, Susan mentioned it. Looking at things year to year. The overall, just the format and presentation, of the survey, I think we'd be better served if we, could look at, say, the last 3 or 4 years worth of survey results, with the most recent one being, the most prominent, but be able to have like maybe smaller, graphs underneath these that show like the previous 3 years, in addition to the one that we're looking at now. Just to kind of get a sense of trends and all that.
Yeah, well, not all of the questions are the same over a 3-year period. So we do make adjustments at the committee level. That's why we tend to just go back 1 year, and we try to pick questions that we can compare from year to year.
Right, well, maybe we could look at trying to get some core questions that would be the the benchmarks that we could use, you know, the broader ones that, you know, commonalities that are really fundamental to a good school climate.
So Ian, that's why I think the model that the state is going to be providing is going to be an asset to us. And especially if it's based on standards for social emotional learning. So I think that's what they're trying to get at the state, and that will be very helpful to the district.
Understood,
Yep.
and I appreciate those efforts. I would hope that, you know, we as a district could commit to a certain level of consistency, because it's really hard to track continuity from year to year if we don't have the same classifications. You know, if we keep changing the lens, we're never going to get a sense of what it is we're looking at. So yeah, at some point we got to make a commitment, and I appreciate what the state's doing. Maybe that could be the model that we do commit to for like a sustained 5-6 year period, at least, maybe 10-year, something like that. Because it is hard to get things in context looking at the presentation the way it is now. Thank you.
I'm going to recognize Jen and then myself.
Okay. I agree with Ian's comments, like either like a bar chart or a line graph, whatever it may be, to show trends. And the consistency between the questions. But my question is for the early elementary school, I guess it really pertains to both. Is a neutral counted as positive or negative?
It's counted. I only counted the yeses as positive.
Okay,
To
so
me, that's what positive was, and maybe that
yes,
was.
no, I wasn't sure like what
Yes.
you did with the neutral.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And I just wondered, Denise, is this a good time to discuss? I mean, we're getting a really high overview here of the entire district, but each school is going to be analyzing their data very deeply and then developing plans. So just for everyone's knowledge, background, can you explain where we're going to go with the
Sure.
school by school data?
Sure. The principals have had the data since the spring, you know, since it closed in June. And they've been reviewing the data. They've been, you know, meeting with their admin team. They will meet, if they haven't already, with their school improvement team. Many of them have one team that is a school improvement team, their culture climate committee, their school leadership committee, and looking to set some goals for their school in terms of what areas they'd like to focus on this year based on the data.
And I would say the middle school and high school, elementary's been really mostly positive, but last year we really noticed that there were, not last year, the year before last, we noticed that there were really some concerns. So Peter took it right out of the gate and he brought the problem and he identified the problems and took some ownership of it, and then he created teams to work on different areas, working collaboratively with his staff. And they really addressed them throughout the year, and people really commented on how they felt that that meant a lot, that they were really recognizing it and wanting to do something, and they brought the teachers in to help solve the problem, as did the high school. And we've noticed this year, we've seen much better results at the secondary level, and I think that had a lot to do with it. So owning it and saying, okay, we see it's a problem. What are we going to do about it? How can you help us with this?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so for the elementary school adults in the, looking at the parent survey as well as the staff survey, keeping with that same theme of safe and secure buildings. Our parent survey at the elementary level had a little dip. It's 97.9%, from 99%.
Which is incredible, 99%.
Right.
That's, you know,
Feeling that the building is safe and secure. Versus the staff, which had an increase from 85% to 91%, or I'm sorry, 88%. We actually have this chunk, and I'm not sure if it would be helpful or if you want to go through and stop in
slide by
between.
slide.
We've chunked it into sections. Would it be easier to hold questions till the end of each section, or do you want to answer them as we go? I should have asked that ahead of time, and I apologize.
Are we okay with waiting till the end?
I think we could go back to the
Section?
slide if they wanted to refer to it.
Honestly, I'd rather like kind of, if we're doing section by section, I mean, I think it'd be more efficient to kind of close out each slide with like a series of questions and then move on. just, because it's a lot to track throughout the whole thing. There's a lot of slides here and I don't know. That's just my opinion, but I'd be curious to hear the rest of the board.
Well, it's chunked, so this is one section. So there's a couple slides here
For safety.
for safety and then questions. Or we could go slide by side. Okay, let me just keep going. So the staff has increased again, like I said, from 91%, from 88% to 91%. Elementary level. Secondary students, why is this not? It wrote?
Oh,
Oh,
there you go.
sorry, it was lagging. Our secondary students, a major focus over the last few years has been the bus ride to and from school. We know that there were concerns, about the combining the middle and high school. So this was a question we really wanted to track. And we saw a positive response to the bus, that they feel safe. And this is of students that ride the bus. So there is a separate option for I don't ride the bus, and they were not included in this. But of the students that ride the bus, 85% believe that they feel safe on the bus, where 14% do not. Okay, and that was sort of flatline, which is why you don't see an arrow up or down on here. It kind of remained over the 2-year period. Oh, boy, huh? Should I keep going? Oh, there we go. Secondary school adults, meaning parents again, and staff members. Our secondary parents believe that 95% of them have positive feelings about how the school is in terms of safety and secure. That is an increase from 85%, so a nice jump. And also the staff, 79% believe that the school is a safe and secure place. And I don't know if you can see that on the bottom, but that increased from 65%. So that was a significant jump in over a 1-year period of how the staff was feeling at Fitch High School and
In Groton Middle.
Groton Middle.
Right, so at this point, then we'll entertain questions on this section. And I know Ian had his hand up, and then I'll recognize Dean. Ian?
Thank you, Jay. So this is kind of a, overall, looking at this, it's similar to my comment from the other night on the data presentation. It'd be great to have breakouts of this. Not only, I mean, these are also general broad-based questions. So similar to my comment before about having some continuity, from like the last 3 years to show trends, but also to have lenses to look through, because, parent and staff, those are very broad brushes. I mean, we have 7 schools. So, when it comes to building security or bus security, it'd be good to have some more specificity in the surveys, in the sense of like, what, are there critical areas? Are there critical areas to look at, or is one school have something modeled better than another? So I can appreciate what's been done here, but I feel like there's some, detail that we could drill down on a little bit here. Thank you.
So this is specific to 612, so it's not all 7 elementary, all 7 schools across the district. It's the 2 secondary schools. So that's, I just want to clarify that this is specific to secondary. And then in terms of, drilling down a little bit, that's, I believe, where some of those comments where we're able to look at that, and the building principals and administrator are able to look at that and do that drilling down to see exactly, where, if any, those weak spots are, those areas that we maybe need to look for improvements on.
So I was gonna,
Just to follow up on that, then I guess, yeah, like, I understand the elementary and secondary break, I guess. I don't know, yeah, the individual buildings, like, is that not commonly shared with us as far as like the surveys, how they break out to the specific buildings? Or are we waiting for their principals to present
When the
to us?
principals come back, Ian, because it goes into their school plan, improvement plan. And so just like the academics go in and what are we going to do about it? We also put in the culture and climate.
Yeah.
So they will be reporting to you.
Yeah, and it is a lot of information, which is why we tried to summarize for this presentation tonight.
All right, thank you.
Recognize Dean, as I had said, and then Adrian.
So, a similar question, do we have any information on maybe the reason why kids don't feel safe in a bus? I mean, I can imagine, like we've all ridden school buses, I think, and they're not necessarily happy places when there are cliques or anything between, just not comfortable with other students, don't want to sit next to somebody, don't want to be, the crowd in the back, or sometimes just outright bullying. Do we know whether that's what's going on? Why we have 1 out of 7 kids saying they don't feel safe riding the bus?
I'd have to look back at the survey to see if we asked an open-ended question, if they said no. I can't recall right
Whether there
now.
was a follow-up to, why? Yeah, all
I
right.
don't believe there was for the students. There is for the parents and staff. Obviously, staff don't respond to the bus question, but there is for parents. There's an opportunity to make comments. It's interesting though, and I feel like it's a good point to mention this. So back in the spring, we did a transportation survey to get a sense of, who is riding our buses? Why are they riding them? If they're not riding them, why? And there were lots of themes and reasons for the why are they not riding the buses? And very few said that it was a safety issue. It was more related to timing, length of bus ride, perhaps, after school activities. Safety was not a thread, a theme within that transportation survey. I just feel the need to share that piece. So it's,
Yeah. Do we have a sense that when we ask questions like safe, do you feel safe?
right.
I mean, when we think of safety, we're meaning literal physical safety, no,
But it could be emotional. It could be a bully or somebody.
or not even a bully, just, it could be just,
Having to get on the
those,
bus.
those,
and not
those,
know.
those kids, so, I don't get along with those kids. They don't bully me necessarily, but I'm not part of that crowd and I just feel excluded. And that's just how it is. We can't all be, one big giant happy family. There are going to be, kids that group themselves together, and that creates a level of discomfort. I think a kid might say, I don't feel safe, meaning I would rather not ride on the bus. The shorter the bus ride, the better. The sooner I get off, the better, because, they're back there talking, that kind of a thing. So do we have any way of sort of teasing out when we say safety, do they mean the same thing when they respond? And why don't we ask, why don't you feel safe of the secondary students?
We can certainly take that under consideration for the next year's survey.
Okay.
Yeah, so my question, I guess, goes when we're talking about staff survey in secondary, did you find that the schools, the middle school and the high school were about the same
Yes.
as far as my buildings are safe and secure? It says 79% positive.
Yeah.
It was about the same for the middle school and high school.
Yeah, it was very interesting to see that. That was actually one of the things I noticed. There were huge gains in both specifically in the parent survey and the staff survey. And the gains were they almost mirrored each other, which was interesting, very close. So.
Recognize Matthew and then Ian.
I have some concerns, and I don't want them to be seen as a criticism. But I think the purpose of the survey, or one of the purposes of the survey, one is for internal use on a district level, one is for internal use on a school by school basis, or maybe even on a grade by grade basis. But in terms of a policy basis, it needs to empower the board. And I'm looking forward to the new data coming out, but I don't feel empowered by this whatsoever. There are just too many questions. And we're looking at next year, I'd rather wait a month and get the whole package together than force you to come back and do it a second time. That's one thing. Nick Caruso, when he spoke, he suggested, or at least I understood him to suggest, that it might be useful to have, what do we call them?
The dashboard.
Dashboard. A dashboard specific to the district, a dashboard specific to CK, a dashboard specific to the middle school or Fitch. Some elements might be present in all. Some might be the goals of the elementary schools may vary a little bit. I have about 12 photographs I took at L&M because they have a dashboard on every service. Some of them focus on finance, some of them focus on patient satisfaction, some of them focus on goals, and I will be sending them as soon as I get a chance to put it together in a single letter to the board and Susan. But I think maybe you should send it to you guys as well, because if we're going to have individual schools come up with their plan, I think that is wonderful. And let's celebrate that on the dashboard. Here are our goals for the year. And you don't have to change it daily or even weekly, but every 2 months or so, or every period that you decide is the appropriate period or so. How are we doing? So they say, look, how are we doing? You know, let's have a look at it. Now, going on to another thing. It is distressing to me to see that the upper elementary school, 36.6% of the kids don't feel safe. Part of this goes to what Dean was saying is, what does safe mean to an upper level elementary school kid? If you can help define what that means, that would help us understand it. But I'd like to tease it out. We have a responsibility to know what's going on so that we can discuss what policy options we want to suggest to Susan to work with you guys. And that rolls over into the letter from GEA. And then, if I may, because I think it's directly related, may I, Jay? There are two competing goals. Now, maybe they're wrong, complementary goals. They're not competing goals, complementary goals. I hear, I don't know the other woman yet. I know Beth, I haven't met the other woman yet. I hear what she's saying about teachers needing to feel safe, that they can express themselves without the risk of being turned into politics. I concur, but politics comes from the word polis, and polis is the people or the entity, the assemblage of our little society called Groton Public Schools. And it's important in that sense of politics that we know what's going on amongst the members of our school. I'm trying to thread a needle because we need to know more than we're getting from just Likert type scales. We need to know some qualitative feeling. So how do we get the qualitative feeling and still respect the teacher's needs to feel safe, to use a word? I don't know if it's a good suggestion or not. It's just an idea. I think we should get all the qualitative administration should get all the qualitative statements because the GEA and administration have agreed on that format. And then administration can say, these are the ones that we don't think could possibly identify a teacher. Show it to the GEA. Say, is there anything here that you think puts a teacher at risk? And if they are, pull it. But let us have not one or two comments as we did, or sometimes 3 last year. Doesn't give us a lot of depth. Let's have the comments so that teachers know that they can make comments, that all the comments are going to be reviewed to protect their privacy, to protect them from politics, but also to give us the maximum amount of information. I think we can thread that needle. Thank you.
And I would say, can I just say this though, when it comes to goal setting, teachers take these seriously too, and they look at the results as well. So they're making goals around their own classrooms. And I'm certain that upper elementary will say that's not good to have 36% not feeling safe. So I can see them circling up in morning meeting and talking about safety in school and what does that mean? Or having lessons through second step around school safety. And school safety is not just physical, as I think Dean said or someone said, it's also
Emotional.
emotional
Mhm.
safety. I mean, there have been adults who've been at meetings around here, and in the town that maybe didn't feel so safe. So, and they've told us that before they left. So, that's something that we have to really consider, but with the deep dive is really the classroom teacher with the kids. Really examining what does that look like? Like the example of when we were really interested in having a go-to person or a trusted adult. And they really worked on that and they made sure kids knew who that a trusted adult was. And in elementary, it's usually a classroom teacher, but it could be a social worker, it could be the principal. So I think that's where you see
Janitor
the
for my
concerted
school.
effort, into really resolving that. And then you see some more positive results the next year.
I think with the teachers and we are on the same goal. We all want the same goal. So if there are some conflicts, I don't really think it's a conflict, just different perspectives. Let's work together to find a way to bridge those and get the data to us so we can think about how we can help make this an even better district for the kids.
So I'm going to recognize Ian and then Adrian and then Jen.
Thank you, Jay. And I just want to thank Matt for bringing up those points. Those definitely remind me of some of the comments I had last week on the data presentation stuff. Again, and I'm in full agreement with Matt's requests, I guess, for more data, more context, more getting a better sense of the complementary interests. I think that's a good correction on his part as far as like it's not competing, it's complementary what we're trying to do here. And having like a more comprehensive presentation on this would be very useful. Like knowing the questions that were asked, having like all the raw responses collected. Of course, we're gonna anonymized, but knowing what was asked and what the prompts were that prompted the responses. Having a little bit more specificity in what safe means is helpful. But also when it comes to goal setting, I am a little concerned that we may get a little too much tunnel vision on one particular thing or another. And I'd be curious to hearing about the minority report, so to speak, as far as like what were the second, third, other, complementary interests as far as that goes. Because again, back to Matt's point about the politics is really like, the modern context of it being used is a little it's a skewed thing, but if you look at it, through just the breakdown of the word and etymologically, it's as he said, it's about people, but it's also about policy. Policy and politics have the same root word, or the same root to the words, and that's in essence that's what politics is supposed to be about. It's not it's about developing good policy, and policy leads to procedure and regulation. So that's what we really need to kind of be just, I feel like a more comprehensive. This is a great broad brush approach, but it'd be great to have an integrated meeting where the principals are here and like as Matt suggested, having it sort of like us being able to kind of go, scale up or scale down as needed. We can't fix something if we don't know all the problems, and we, even if we may have to prioritize those things, I think it's great to get a good sense of what the scope is. Thank you.
So Adrian, then Jen, and then I'll recognize myself and then Dean.
Right. I'm going to go back to the statement that you read, that teachers want the district or in the individual schools to use the material and they don't want it to be politicized.
Right. That is the design of the culture and climate, right? That was the legislative intent, was that the schools would take the data and create school improvement teams and create yeah.
So are we
So-
politicizing it?
I'm
don't-
not going to get into a.
I guess I don't
conversation about
understand what that word means in this context.
that. I have no idea. That was
So
a statement from the GEA. They're just, they want the data to be used for the purpose, I guess it was designed. But I really can't
All
go
right.
further on what they meant.
I mean, there were specific questions on whether the board could receive the teacher comments directly. And their response doesn't seem to answer that question. If the teachers feel comfortable, if the GEA feels comfortable with the comments being shared with the board. So
I can only tell you, I've seen discussions on the CABE chair list that there's a concern of a chilling effect, that the comments can be traced back to people based on the certain comments, and that you will have less staff, potentially have less staff participation going in the future. But that's just one person's opinion. So
yeah,
I don't know if that's what the GEA meant or not.
yeah. Last spring, when this had come up, Dr. Piazza had said that they had a way to work this out, so we would have an answer to this question this year. But I'm guessing that we just have the GEA statement. So I guess maybe one way of getting around that would be for Susan. Can we just have a question on the teachers' surveys that says, do you feel comfortable sharing your comments with the board, or these comments being public? I mean, that seems like a good way to, parse out who is comfortable having their comments shared and who isn't. Is that reasonable?
Professionally, I think that it alters the purpose of the survey. The survey is, I think it alters the purpose of the survey. The survey is intended to improve school climate, and that's something that the building administrators work on with their building level teams. That's the purpose of the survey. The purpose of the survey is not to share the comments with, the newspaper or the Board of Ed or anyone's evaluation. It's simply to share with the principal suggestions and feedback in terms of how that building operates. So I think that I tell myself all the time that I need to keep that in mind in terms of what is the purpose of the survey and can we stay true to that purpose?
And like with any other data, how does it inform our decision and our goal setting for the future so that we can make those improvements? But that's the work, not even of mine, that's the work of the buildings and the principals, and I support them in that work, but that's something that I have to allow them to be responsible for.
I guess I just see it slightly different as if the board doesn't have a comprehensive understanding. So how many questions are we seeing? Like, what percentage of the questions that were asked are we seeing?
We'd have to go back. The questions vary depending on the group. So probably the group with the least amount of questions would be the early elementary and the upper elementary. There are more questions at the secondary level because we probe a little bit deeper in terms of different areas in the building where they may feel safe or unsafe, like hallways, bathrooms, things like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I kind of went through and there wasn't a lot of, if you just looked at school adults' comments, there wasn't a lot of questions that were included in this.
Sorry, say that again.
I didn't see that there were a lot of adults that were included in some of this data. So so I guess I'm just wondering how many, were adults asked 50 questions and we see 10 here, or what percentage of the actual total number of questions?
So the staff are asked the most questions. And I don't have the number right now, but we could get that to you.
Could you guess?
No,
Is it more than 20? I mean,
I'd have to check, honestly.
There's more than.
all right.
But I would say we were trying to select questions that had been asked the prior year so we could see the improvement
Mhm.
or, maybe challenges with it, continued challenges, right?
And then
So, this isn't my original question, but since it came up in discussion, is it possible before the survey is sent next year that we get copies of the questions that is going to be distributed to all of the different populations? So just so that we know what we're asking of either the kids, the parents, or the teachers, just for information. As you know, this board loves data, so don't be scared about sending us data. It makes us feel comfortable. I already feel like maybe the survey is not reaching what we want, since we only, like, at least in the secondary, if I remember correctly, there was only 135 teachers or something like 31%. So the other 70%, are they dissatisfied? You know what I mean? So like, we're only looking at 30% of their feedback, of the people who responded. So we need to be concerned about that as well, because we don't know what the other 70% is thinking, and that's important, at least from my perspective. So that's all I wanted to say.
Dean?
I'm hoping this is useful. I thought of this when I heard of some of the discussion. I talked about safety and how safety means different things to different people. Did not mean to imply that it should mean different things to different people, because it's quite possible, especially these days, I'm afraid, for people to feel unsafe when really what's happened is they heard something in a meeting they don't like, that makes them feel uncomfortable, could be challenging their own assumptions, whatever the reasons. We have a great tendency to use the word safety as an umbrella. So we talk about physical safety, emotional safety, et cetera, and that unfortunately glides into these other areas. So people, like I said, who heard something they didn't like will walk out of a meeting and say, well, I felt unsafe. Really what you're saying is, I heard something I didn't like. You're uncomfortable, and that's not feeling unsafe. So I want to make sure that if we do use the word safety, yes, I understand people are using it in different ways, but we should try to control the meaning if possible and keep it to what it's supposed to be about. When I think of emotional lack of safety, I think of somebody who's actually, say, tortured mentally, tortured emotionally. It's not the same thing as I feel uncomfortable. I mean, I'm cold. So am I physically unsafe?
Are you gonna shut down the heat?
No, you can leave it on. That's fine. You'll just be back up to turn it back up again.
Yeah.
So that's all. That's just pointing that out. Let's use the word safe carefully.
Next, I'll recognize Ian.
Thank you, Jay. I definitely appreciate all the comments, Adrian, Jen. I think it's our job, as a Board of Education to help, the superintendent develop policy and procedure to manage the district. And as I said before, like, we can't fix problems if we don't know about the problems. And I'm a little concerned, because I'm not trying to call anyone out, because I'm not, I don't know any information. I'm just saying, in general, it's good to have like sort of a two-lens approach. You got to do like, a top-down perspective, but also a bottom-up perspective. And what's missing to me, from my perspective, is, yes, we get all this information processed through the administrator level. But to Jen's point, what if, so there's the lowest percentage of participation in the survey is coming from the staff. And my concern is, like, the way that the information is being processed is that it's coming through the administration only. It's not coming from a bottom up level. And so, what if, just hypothetically speaking, what if the administrator was the problem? What if what if teachers had concerns with a principal or certain, like, building management? How can we help address a climate problem specific to, a certain, administration situation, if we don't have that information, if we don't have, like, the on some level, I know we have to respect privacy, of course. Like, I'm not trying to violate that in any way, but I'm just trying to, like, make sure that we are empowering both, I should say, all sides involved. And if someone, is on ground level having an issue with the climate in a specific location due to what they perceive as, some sort of persecution coming from an administrator, or just a hostile work environment for whatever reason, who can they communicate that to? If not the administration themselves. I mean, like it's just a little problematic, I guess, in my mind from, like the way I'm looking at it. I'm just looking for some more like granular information. And, I remember we did have this conversation last year or earlier this spring, I should say. It feels more than like a year ago, but and Dr. Piazza at the time did verbally commit to putting a question out there directly on the survey to ask if the teachers wouldn't mind us receiving the raw comments with names and identifying factors removed. Identifying to the person, not to the location. And so, moving forward, I guess, I mean, Dr. Piazza has moved on, but I would like to have that continuity or that sort of like a discussion. So, I know we're doing a referral review later in this meeting tonight, so I'm just going to throw that out there to the chair. I guess, that's something I'm going to be bringing up for a referral for a meeting agenda item in the future, in the very near future, is because, I think as a board, we have a responsibility to consider all perspectives, on both a macro level and a micro level. And, not just the administration perspective, but also like, the ground level teachers, paras, tutors. And I will, I'm going to try to carve out some time here and look around at other schools and reach out to other fellow board members in other municipalities to see how they do it in other places. I mean, do we have a sense of that at all? Do we talk to other districts and kind of do some comparative studies? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I address the hostile work environment question?
Sure.
So if a teacher or an administrator or a non-certified staff member feel that they're working in a hostile environment or they are experiencing any type of bullying or harassment, there are avenues for them to pursue in terms of a union rep at their building or the president, co-president of their union. There's human resources, and there's also a complaint procedure. So there are avenues, many avenues for staff to pursue if they are finding themselves in that situation. I would think that the survey would be the last avenue that they would utilize because it's anonymous and the results sometimes aren't looked at until mid to late June.
Right. And I guess maybe to counter that, maybe it's not a direct hostile work environment. Maybe it's just like something that in general is, that would be more appropriate to look at in a survey level. It's not like a direct active, but it's more general pervasive.
And
know,
I would, oh, go on.
Again, I mean, I was saying my piece. I mean, obviously, like we all have our opinions and we can carry on. I don't want to, belabor the point, but I feel like there is, some context and that's lacking here. In the
And
grand.
I heard you talk about top down,
Oh,
but when
One
we
more
started,
thing is I'm greatly concerned that there's no non-certified staff on the committee for the survey. Like that caught my ear early on in the description of, and that's definitely, we need to address that immediately. Thank you.
Yeah, we are addressing that. I think part of the problem is we meet at 2:30. So some of the elementary folks are still at school. But that is something that we are looking to address for sure.
Well, that ties into this next slide I'm looking at right here. It says belonging. So, if that's the case, if the time is the problem, then maybe we change the time to include the broad spectrum that make up the whole district, that, that we need representatives of all layers of the school district involved in this process. And I do think also having a question where, the staff themselves can answer the question, do they mind if we see their raw responses with all proper privacy concerns allotted for? Thank you.
Jen, did you have something before we go on to?
Yeah, it was just a quick question. To remain totally anonymous, do we have boxes like where teachers can drop in or students where they could just drop in like comments, so unofficial surveys. That's totally anonymous, just a box somewhere random in each of the building.
Sure, so the survey is taken electronically. And there are opportunities for comments in all of the surveys for all of the stakeholders.
Oh, not, I mean, not survey related, but just like a box, like any time of the year or day, that people can put comments in the box.
I think
We have to
too,
ask the principals. I know they have it for students.
Okay.
If the students want to see.
I don't know how well that's worked, but there are so many avenues for people through their building rep to talk. I know that every principal meets with their building rep. I take the union presidents out for breakfast once a month. And we just sit and we talk about things, and they will be very honest with me to say if something is up or needs to be, shared. Anne Marie came with me to one of the breakfasts. We're gonna have the AGSA on Thursday. And those are so beneficial. Our listening tours, when Phil and I would go around and just listen and have a cookie and a juice, and Anne Marie's gonna do that. People do let us know when they feel things need to be fixed. And, I think having it at the committee level, the design of the survey is important. And then the results of the survey, they go through the results of the survey. We just did it for professional learning and the professional learning that we had at the beginning of the year. And we honestly shared all the results. So that I think means a lot that our staff is committed to this and is working with us on that, and are part of that. So you're right, it can't just be at survey time. It's kind of got to be an ongoing,
On,
always.
yes, ongoing
process,
always.
Always. Yeah, agreed. Anne Marie?
So I'm new to the district, but I'm not new to surveys. And generally what I find, excuse me, is that people that fill out surveys are really two types. Either I have a lot of positive things to say. Again, as Superintendent Austin just mentioned, we just went over the survey results for the PD that happened in August. And there were two types of people that had filled out the survey. I had a lot of positive things to say about the PD that happened in August. And then there were the other types of people on the other extreme. I didn't like the PD that we had in August. There were really no people in between. And that's generally what we see with survey results. Those people that are kind of like in between, middle, didn't have a lot to say, didn't feel strongly either way, they don't take that opportunity. So, I know that there's some question about, who are these people there? We got a low response rate or not the response rate that we wanted to see. Those are the people that didn't have a strong enough, what I find are those people that didn't have a strong enough opinion either way. I can say this as a parent. I work for, obviously, a school system. I've worked for school systems now 27, I think this is my 28th, close to 30th year. I know how important these surveys are for school districts, and I get the survey in my home. I know I should fill it out, and I don't fill it out for West Hartford Public Schools. Do you know why? Because I'm generally content. I don't really have complaints. And so I don't fill it out, and I probably should, because generally I'm really happy with the school system. Maybe there's something that happens during the year and like, whoop, but I don't feel strongly enough either way that I'm not going to submit a complaint, and I'm not, going to submit the survey that says like I'm, through the moon, like, and I probably should,
And I
because
think people are busy.
yes, and I think people are busy.
I think people are busy.
All right. You want to go on with belonging? We're going to move on with the belonging section.
I have my hand raised, Jay. One comment. I appreciate the assistant superintendent's comments there, but there's another possible reason for the disaffection or disengagement, I should say, from a survey. Is like maybe the people that don't engage with the survey, who are sort of middle of the road, who have generally content, but maybe have some small details that they could be done better, or they want to praise and maybe build upon. They're not hearing it received in detail by the bodies that can make the changes. Either like it's to improve a positive and build upon a positive, or to address a negative. You know, I think, and it kind of circles back to the point that a number of us have made that, you know, having more access to the raw responses and understanding the questions that were asked to get the full comprehensive context of the survey, it gives us a better sense of the climate, you know, in detail, with all privacy concerns addressed. So I just wanted to kind of, you know, close out with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of belonging, here I just grouped together, I clustered together the upper and lower elementary. Overall, 65% had positive things to say, felt that they enjoyed going to school as an elementary student. This was down from 67%. In terms of a trusted adult, we had an increase. 77% of the students at the elementary level feel that they have a trusted adult that they can go to when they're feeling sad, worried, mad. That is an increase from last year as well.
But still, we need to work on it. I don't think we're done yet
Right.
in any of these cases, right?
Yes.
So we're still looking to make improvements year to year.
And in terms of the elementary school parents, when asked about opportunities for parental involvement, there was a very minimal decrease. 92% had positive responses, which was down from 93%. So really, really a flat line for all intents and purposes. I feel comfortable talking with my child's teacher. Note that 99% of the parents that responded feel comfortable talking with their teacher.
And I saw that as a real plus. That really awed me to think that they feel that comfortable with it. Because that's the one, if there's any one person in that building that you want a family member to feel as responsive as that classroom teacher.
Absolutely.
That's where the problems
Yeah.
get solved.
Yeah.
Secondary school parents, same questions, opportunity for parental involvement. 73% said yes, they feel that there is opportunity there. Feeling comfortable talking to the child's teacher went from 90% last year to 94% this year. So overall, across the district, our parents are feeling comfortable with their children's teachers. Secondary students, they, when asked if they have a trusted adult in the school, 84% believe that they do have someone they can go to, which is down from 88%. And extracurricular activities is up to 69% from 66%. So slow and steady. That question.
And I would say there was a concerted effort with the latest grant for after-school involvement. And I know Dan Couture, the counselor at Fitch, was very involved leading that way. We're looking to support another grant, but those after-school beyond the sports. Sports is really wonderful and a lot of our kids that participate, but there's other things that kids like to do, like the robotics team, you know, and to have a lot of choice of after-school events just causes a better feeling, or better sense of belonging in a
Right.
school.
And the reason, it's looking to improve engagement and improve chronic absenteeism, too, which was a focus. So some of the comments from safety, belonging, you can see staff meetings are much more enjoyable in the horseshoe shape. These were direct results of, some of the feedback given from last year. So this specifically came from a secondary, staff member who noted, an appreciation for how the meetings had kind of evolved based on the feedback from last year. I won't read through all of the parent comments or, staff comments. I thought an interesting one was that the staff was feeling hard to connect when we think about belonging. Those teachers who are teaching multiple courses across multiple rooms, it makes it hard to connect with kids, especially when they can't find you, because especially at the middle school level, those children usually seek out the adults that they want to say something to. So when you're not in that same space, sometimes that can make it tricky to form some of those relationships. A parent did include, and going back to that whole idea of safety potentially, the bathrooms seem to be a hot spot still. They feel that their children are feeling uncomfortable while using the bathrooms still. And another parent felt that the school was clean, was well maintained, but some of the equipment was dated and probably needed to be replaced.
And interesting that they mentioned the CIPs. It would be better if they weren't zeroed out every year. Well, that's an involved parent, I guess, who's paying attention.
Okay, so I'll present the respect and inclusion slides. So in terms of our early elementary students, you can see.
Yeah, I think we wanted to stop at each
Oh,
section and see
sorry
if
about
anybody had any questions.
Thank you, Jay. That's exactly what I was about to say. Thank you.
Yep, some, I'll recognize Ian and then anyone else. And then Adrian.
Yeah, so I mean, not to belabor the point, but this is, you know, an example of what, I mean, these are raw responses, yet it's only a select few. So it's hard. It's hard to kind of get an overall sense. I mean, I'm glad that there's some critical ones in here as well as positives. You know, so that gives a good balance. But again, it's I can't help but feel it's a curated product I'm looking at. And that's just nothing, you know, hint of, you know, I'm not trying to cast any aspersions. I'm just saying it's a selective. I'm not reading raw data. And overall, like, so I was looking at some of the numbers in parentheses below the percentages, that's the actual number of respondents, just to be clear.
Yes, that's the student count or the survey count, yes.
Got it. Okay, so overall, I mean, in the elementary schools, what's our total student population?
Hold on.
I think it's like 2,000 in the elementary.
For
and
last
2,000
year.
in secondary.
Sorry, for last year, it was 1,030 at the early elementary and 921 at the upper elementary. So a total of 1,900 elementary students.
I'm sorry, for the elementary, what was it again?
1951.
I said 2,000. I'm pretty close.
1951, but.
I agree. I'm a rounding
That's-
type of
that's
person
the-
myself.
The total population, the number that completed the survey was closer, it was 1,519. So 1,519.
Okay, so a couple of comments here. I guess I'm looking, I downloaded the presentation that was included in the agenda. And I'm looking at that one and I don't have the numbers in parentheses included in those.
Right, we talked about that at the beginning. We made some changes when we met as a team.
Okay.
And we're going to include this in your board notes on Friday.
All right, so this whole presentation will be in our board notes with the numbers in parentheses?
Yes.
All right, because yeah, I mean, overall, just a rough cut of the percentages, looking at like about 600 or 700 out of 1950 that responded, parents. Is
No,
that
these are students.
Oh, these-
Student,
in the previous section, in the belonging section? It's parents that had felt they could talk to the teachers. I guess that was one thing that caught my eye. And I'm trying to look back on but I don't have the parentheses in my copy, so.
I'm
Anyway,
trying to understand what you're confused about, Ian. Are you confused about the percentage of parents that answered the survey?
could we go back to the slide with the trusted adult and teacher relationships? Yeah. All right. So trusted adults. Okay. So I'm seeing 947 positive and 172 negative. All right. So yeah, definitely. I would like to get a copy of this for sure. Just to have that information in there. And it sounds like we might be getting there anyway with the conversation, but I just wanted to note that having like it seemed like maybe I misunderstood. But talking about working on the trusted adult goal, I'm not sure, that you can specify a trusted adult for a student. A student will find their own trusted adult. And,
Well, that's what we're asking. I always ask the question when they come to see me too. Who do you have to go to when you go back to school? So I know that I have at least a couple names and kids, but I don't tell the kids who their trusted adult is. I ask them. And that's what we're doing. We're asking it on the survey. Do
I'm
you
sorry.
have?
So you're
adult?
asking the students for the names of the people that they trust?
No,
No, no.
Yeah, I misunderstood the way you phrased that. I guess maybe anyway. All right. So, but you're asking if they have one.
Right.
Okay. All right. Good to know. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, the context of the conversation, it seemed like maybe you were trying to specify a trusted adult for kids to go to. So am
No,
I, that's
the
not,
kids really specify who that adult is. And sometimes they meet with them or they check in the morning. You know, some kids need a little more direction with that and support.
totally. I just wanted to clarify because the way it was discussed, it came across as if the district was designating a specific trusted adult for students to go to. At least that's the way I heard it. So thank you for the clarification on that. I definitely think, yeah, when it comes to that, it's a highly organic process for students to find their trusted adults.
Adrian?
Yeah, back to the first slide in this, I like going to my school. To me, I see this as an extremely important question. And, last year it was broken up, into upper and lower elementary, and breaking it up showed a significant difference. It showed that lower elementary, 80% of the kids liked going to school. Where upper elementary, it was only 56% actually like going to school. I mean, that's the age-old question. How do you make kids like go to school? But it's obviously something that we strive at. So again, I feel like the information as it's kind of parsed up and given to us, now we just have one conglomerate number that left out something important that maybe we need to focus on making school more interesting or fun or something like that for fourth graders and fifth graders. And maybe the kids in first grade love it. But that is important information that was, that seems to be missing this year.
It's not missing. We didn't include it in here. I can break that out for you if you'd like for when I do that.
And just to clarify real quick, this presentation was originally scheduled for the main meeting. And I asked if it could be put together because I felt like it's going to take up an entire meeting. And I didn't want us to be constrained by all the other things we need to accomplish at a main meeting. So it's my fault that the timeline was kind of compressed here for them to get this particular presentation together. But once again, the buildings will be presenting their data in a much more comprehensive way, along with their action plans, when we're also talking about the academic. It all becomes, we'll be spending, I believe it's basically most of October and November hearing from the schools and what their data is and what their plans are. So what that's worth.
So can we get the full survey results ahead of that?
I'm sorry, can you clarify what you mean by that? The full survey results?
Yeah, so comments taken out. Can we get the entire survey results? Like you gave each principal the survey for their school. Can we get that as a board?
The principals have the raw data.
I'm talking about raw data.
That's up to the superintendent and the board chair.
So you're just talking about the data.
Yeah, I would like to just have the full survey.
Yeah.
So I can look at and see it, so we have, a half a dozen questions in each section that you felt were most important for the board to see. I'm just wondering if there's more questions in there that are important that I'm interested in. So I would, we can leave the teacher comment thing aside, but student comments would be great if they're appropriate or if they don't, violate anybody's, well, I guess we couldn't do student. We don't do student comments, right? Yeah.
Are you
So-
asking for it by school?
Yeah. If it's
They're
been
going to
parsed up
be
that way, so maybe no comments, just all the data by school.
Lauren.
So I do have it all. It's it's that balance of trying to determine what do we bring here where it's not belaboring all the information necessarily. The whole purpose was, my understanding was really this was a high level view. That was the purpose of tonight. I do have all of the information broken apart by school. If I don't know, in terms of,
I know that we took elementary and secondary and we kind of color coded it to show the questions that looked like they had made improvement from one year to the next, and the questions that were kind of flatline, and then the questions that maybe went down a little bit.
and
So I know we've done that too.
And even like it's comprehensive, so I have each individual school. I also have all 5 elementary schools together, just noted like school 1, school 2, because the principals like to look at that too. They like to compare
See how they're
themselves
doing compared to the district.
compared to the district, yes, but without, there's that fine line between, having administrators be able to see how they're performing in comparison, but while still trying to keep the integrity and the safety of the other schools in mind. There's that word again. But so I do also have it broken down where it's just school 1, school 2, so you can see like a linear, this is how each school performed. I don't know what that is. I will let the board and the superintendent tell me, but I do have, whatever you need, I can manipulate it. Most of it is available. It's just a matter of, how deep do you want to go?
Yeah, I would just like to.
A lot of data.
I would.
And we
I'm-
would
and
have
I'm
the
fine
time to
with data.
present that at a meeting like this. It would take
I don't think.
many
we should present
meetings.
it. I think if we had that data, those of us that might be interested in looking at the data could look at it well before a meeting with that principal or anything. And then if we had specific questions, so rather than spending time on, a very high level view, we know some specifically things going on in that school or some specific questions that we might have. So having information before the meeting rather than getting information in the meeting.
Well, I don't think we've heard from the AGSA yet, so that might be something that we can't respond to tonight until we do hear from the AGSA.
The AGS, why would, on whether we're allowed to give the data out?
I believe the union heads were weighing in on
Well, that was for the
information.
That was for comments.
Yeah.
I think we should see all the data. I'm still split on the qualitative. I'm very concerned about people's concerns, about being able to trace it back. So I think the board has to have a fuller discussion on that, but
I agree.
yeah, the numeric data.
I have an.
Actually,
I'm sorry.
Ian had his hand raised, and I don't know when Mike raised his. So Mike hasn't, did you want to weigh in, Mike, and then we'll go to Ian?
Yes, thank you. I'm not adverse to seeing all the data in principle. I don't particularly need to, but I do want to echo a word of caution before that's done. And so the school climate data includes responses by children, by minors, and now this is from a different field, but in surveys that are for internal improvement, internal programmatic assessment. In my line of work, that can be done among minors without particular approvals. If it goes beyond that, like if the audience is beyond like for instance, in this case, it would be the school system. It may be that all of a sudden that steps into maybe a protected student record in a way, even though it's anonymous. Because you'd have to have, I don't know if we get parental consent for them to fill out a survey. Because and this is from just my line of research that I touch on once in a while, and it's that if we're going to use it for any external audience, we need parental consent, clearly explain what the use of the data is going to be. So I'd have someone check into that. If it has to be our attorney, then do so before releasing that information. And because, I mean, and I could answer, well, we as the Board of Ed are internal. However, if it's not in executive session, then whatever we get is public. And so the audience then becomes the general public. So if we need to look at it in executive session, that could be a way to do it. So anyway, those my words of caution. I don't have any of the answers to that. I'm just raising those potential issues. That said, what I know you can release is just give us the surveys that each people fill out. Like, what are the questions, right? Like, what do the students get? What do the parents get? What do the staff get at different levels? Just, I mean, that there's no confidentiality. No, there should be no concerns about that. So I'd like those. The unfilled out. This is what was asked last year. And then also, what I'm looking for, we're hearing some of it verbally, but by the end of this presentation, what I'd like to hear from you is from this data, like, what's your analysis? What are the main encouraging points or strengths you're seeing, and what are the main challenges that you see? And if that level of analysis or insight hasn't happened yet, that could be mulled over and bring it back to us. I assume that's happened not for this year, but for last year, and the school plans you're talking about. And if we could see executive summaries of last year's school plans, I'm not sure if they've been provided in past years, but something like that, so that we can see at a school level what are the challenges, what are the strengths, what are the areas of focus that each school is doing. That's the high level, but not like super cloud level, building level that I'd like to see. And I'd like to, instead of having me go through raw data, I'm not adverse to seeing it, but instead of having me go through it, I'd like to have it expertly analyzed with the strengths and the challenges. Thank you.
Can I just have
Thank
a
you, Mike.
clarification?
Okay, and then we're going to go to Jen's been waiting.
Yeah, this is just a clarification for Mike. Were you talking about when you had talked about student confidentiality? We were talking about omitting any specific comments from students and just taking the raw numbers. Were you kind of taking that into consideration, that might be confidential as well?
So I'm not sure about confidentiality. I just know, and this is only from something I do very once in a while in my line of work, where there's special rules for surveying minors, and the exclusion from some of these rules if it's only for internal use. If it goes out for, in this case, to the public, or in our case, if we're going to publish on it, it doesn't matter that it's anonymous. We'd have that anyway. So that there's no personally identifying information. The threshold is the audience it goes to, and what we then have to do. We have to get parental consent, and explain whatever it is, the benefits of answering a survey like this, and the risks, actually. And you might think there are none, but there are always some. So.
All right, so I'm going to recognize Jen and then Ian.
So this is going back like a couple conversations ago, going back to like a trusted adult in their building. And I know it's been mentioned it is organic. In most instances, it's organic and you find your trusted adults, but not all kids are extroverts to be able to find that trusted adult. So I don't know if we put kids in cohorts and say, hey, this is your mentor. I know we have CTLs at the secondary level, but I mean, I'm not sure if that's really getting utilized, but almost something like an affinity. So if you have the kids who are into art, you get like the leader of the art, like the teachers in the art groups. It's if they're like prone to math, like a couple of the teachers in the math groups, and say, hey, this is like somebody you can go to as a resource, whether you go or don't. It's not, but at least it's a name that they can go to, especially if they're not the type of student that can develop that relationship with like teachers or administration. It's just something to consider. Thank you.
Ian?
Thank you. Well, between Adrian, Mike, and Jen, that's pretty much a synthesis of what I was going to comment. I appreciate Jen's refinement of the trusted adult considerations, and I think definitely a balance between what the points that Mike raised and the points that Adrian raised, as far as looking to modify the way that we receive data and trying to get a little more granular with it, with all due respect for privacy and proper procedure as well. So we definitely need to make sure we have our I's dotted and T's crossed in those departments. So I'm not going to belabor the point. I mean, I think we've covered a lot of that. And so do we know if the state, or we haven't seen what the state's coming out with guidance for surveys, right? We haven't seen
Not
any.
yet,
Okay.
not yet, but soon, hopefully. So we
Alright.
can use it.
And just to circle back, Denise mentioned the AGSA. I just want to be clear on like what that is, because maybe I missed a previous thing.
Oh, sure. It's the Association for Groton School Administrators.
Okay. Thank you. So yeah, all right. So like basically the GEA, but for administrators.
Correct.
That's right.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, so before we go on to the next section, I just want to say that I'm all for releasing as much data as we legally can from the district level at this point, while giving the administrators the ability to present their data so that they can speak for their schools. I just only think that's fair. But in terms of all the other questions and district level data, unless there's some legal impediment, I would be all for, releasing that. But it's, if we can look into Dr. Whitney's concerns about,
Yeah, we'll contact
student
Attorney
data.
Lobbin tomorrow. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, she's an expert on FERPA.
I agree with that. The one thing I would like to see is the middle school broken up from the high school, because I feel that those are two very different groups. Similar, obviously, but having those two schools broken out, would be interesting. And as for child confidentiality, we should look into that, because we obviously have surveys in front of us with a lot of child answers.
Right.
So if that needs to be done in executive session or some other means, then we need to.
right,
Jay, would it be appropriate? It's my hope that the GEA, having listened to our conversation, knows that we appreciate the seriousness and relevance of their comments.
Mhm.
And I think the word complementary goals.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering how does the GSA suggest that the Board of Education get more granular insight into opportunities to improve student outcomes regarding climate findings? Let them be partners with us. We keep talking about partnerships, so I would love to invite their reflection on how we could get a more granular view.
So we do have that at the school level, and we have that at the district level, and they're very much involved for representation from across this district.
Okay, all set?
sure.
All right, so we're on to respect and inclusion. And we'll start out with our elementary students. The question is that the school provides books that show different types of families. And we saw a nice increase in this response from our early elementary students, from 66% last year to almost 75% this year. And that was a focus that our district or our K-5 reading coordinator worked on last year, in terms of having books that have pictures that reflect our students and their types of families. In terms of upper elementary, again, a really nice increase from 48% to 63% of our upper elementary students felt that the books that they have in their classroom represent, their families and look like them. In terms of secondary students, again, a little bit of an increase, but a great number overall. 78, almost 79% of our middle school and high school students feel that they're able to select high-level courses. And again, a lot of work's gone into have guidance counselors and teachers counseling students to really challenge themselves in those high-level courses. So we're really pleased to see that. In terms of my teachers help me to try my best, similar, almost comparable to last year, went down a little bit from 89% to 87%. But again, almost 90% of our students, and these are middle school, high school students, feel that their teachers are there to help them do the best that they can. So we're very pleased with that. In terms of the staff at the elementary school level, the first graph is our building fosters an appreciation of student diversity and respect for each other. That went down a little bit. Last year, it was 94% agreed with that question. This year, it was 91.7%. And the second question was the staff respects all colleagues.
Lauren, it didn't advance.
Advance.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank you.
Oh, it's not advancing on this.
Right.
Oh, there it
Yes,
goes.
thank you.
You double click.
And then the second question, the staff respects all colleagues regardless of their race, ethnicity, or culture. And that was 95%, which is pretty impressive. Down, up just 1% from last year. Looking at our secondary school staff, the first question was our building fosters an appreciation of student diversity and respect for each other. Again, this increased from 63% last year to 76.6%. A portion, 23.4% disagreed with that, which is concerning, and something we need to learn more about. But if you look at the second question, the staff respects all colleagues, regardless of their race, ethnicity, or culture. That had a nice jump from 81% last year to 90.6%. So the work with Dr. Sonia Cherry-Paul and Cornelius Minor really we're seeing the fruits of that work. In terms of our parents at the secondary level, the question we posed to them was, this school provides diversity, equity, inclusion, learning opportunities. And that showed a nice growth from 79% to 85.6% of our parents agreeing with that, which just overall is a really, I think, healthy number. And then looking at some of the comments, there was a staff member who felt that the students don't treat each other with respect. And they shared that that's most commonly observed during unstructured times, lunch, recess, special areas. So we thought that was important to include.
Can I just add this? I know you cherry picked, but we looked for things that seemed to trend. So we looked for things that had more than one response. So instead of just a one, for things that maybe you heard several times.
Correct. And I think we talked a little bit last year about the perception of how students demonstrate respect for each other from the lens of an adult versus the lens of a student, and those lenses are very different. In terms of staff, we did see in the survey comments that some student behaviors must be managed better and students must be held accountable for their behavior. So the term progressive discipline is a term we're working on introducing to our staff, because not all behaviors deserve a punitive consequence. All behavior has a consequence, but we are looking at using positive behavioral supports and interventions when possible. A parent shared that their child complains that the behavior of other students disrupts the learning environment in the classroom and prevents the teacher from teaching. And again, I think this speaks to the focus on a state and federal level in terms of school climate, and culture in terms of what's happening in our schools. Because this, is something that that does happen. And it's something that we work really closely with our support staff and our teachers, Dr. Maury Wrightington, and our SRBI teams to develop interventions to support students whose behavior disrupts the learning. One staff member shared, "I feel very supported by my administrators. I feel they're working to establish a positive climate." And then there was a parent that shared, "I wish there were more opportunities for multicultural activities after school for families to participate in." Any comments before we go on to professional growth?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, mostly on things that weren't in here. So last year under respecting and inclusion, and this goes right into that first staff comment that there was a question that said students reach each other. I didn't write that right, but treat each other with respect. Last year, 74% of the high school and middle school staff said no to that. Did we ask that question again this year? And
We did.
we know what did that change at all?
We
Or
couldn't.
not significantly?
We don't have it in the survey. Or the presentation. We'd have to go back and take a look at that.
All right. I mean, that seems like an important
Yeah.
piece of information. Again, going back to like, we get the bird's eye view, but maybe it doesn't have the important things in it.
The adults' perception, is that the question you're asking about?
No, the students.
Yeah, last year.
Treat each other up from the adult.
Yeah. All right. Here it says, under secondary school staff, it says students treat each other with respect. And 74.4% of adults said they don't, negative.
So there was an increase, but off the top of my head, I don't.
All right, but it didn't get better. So that's something
it
we're
did.
working on. Oh, it did. Oh, all right.
Better, but I don't know the percentage off the top of my head.
All right,
I do have
all right,
that.
good.
Look at it.
And then I have one more question. And this is another one. I feel my peers treat me respectfully at school. Last year, 25% responded negatively. That was to secondary students. Did we ask that question again this year?
I do not remember if that was increased or decreased.
All right, so we'll get that in the data.
Well.
All right, thank you.
So if we can get that data on
Oh, was there any
the
parent?
district level.
Was there any parent answers to the questions in this section? If I saw any. Oh, yes. About respect and inclusion. Were there any parent questions? In respecting?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think there was, yeah.
all right.
What I'll give you is the list of all the questions, so you at least know what the questions were. And then I can, we'll talk about something that we've already put together. And it's secondary and elementary, at least to give you a view of the improvements that were made or not. So we can get that out by the end of the week. And then we can disaggregate it more, I think, before the principals come in too.
Ian and then Matthew and then Jen.
Thank you, Jay. And I just want to thank Adrian for bringing up that point about the graph that we saw last year, the two graphs we saw last year, versus it's not part of this presentation this year. And that goes back to my point about having some committed, consistent questions that can carry from year to year. It sounds like maybe the question was asked this year, but the graph was not included. Am I understanding that correctly?
I mirror the questions from last
Yeah,
year. so
we
I'm not
did.
Sure.
Yeah. I think we were trying to provide a summary. And we might not have picked the exact same questions as last year.
Well, that's my point, I guess, is like it's
There's-
the presentation
There's a
should,
lot.
we should
Yeah,
have.
there's a lot that were the same. So again, we were trying to keep the presentation, to a manageable amount. There's a lot of data. So combing through it and finding the similarities, is something that we spend a lot of time doing. But we also want to make sure that we didn't know what else was on the agenda. We didn't know we were the only agenda item. So we're trying to make it a presentation that can be done within the confines of your meeting, knowing that you probably have other agenda items too.
Right. And I do
Well,
take
all that, but-
responsibility.
Hold on
I
a second.
take-
Wait, I
I
want
take-
to thought, please. But we have to have some consistent benchmark baselines, that is a pretty significant one, right? Adults' perception of how children treat each other. That one's pretty big. And I remember we had a lot of conversation about that last year or earlier this spring. So like maybe that should be another referral, to have an agenda item where we as a board decide what it is that we really do want to commit to tracking. That will be part of this presentation. Because I respect the district, the administration's efforts to bring it together, but speaking as a board member, it can be difficult to track, trends and tendencies from year to year, without having certain consistent trackers. And even if it's, if maybe the details of some questions may change, the category that it's trying to address could be the consistent thread. I mean, that's just it's a very stark example as far as like that one in particular, because I do remember that page last year is sort of an inversion. Like you had one circle graph that was mostly yellow and then and with a quarter green, and then the other was the flip of it. So anyway, that's all I got to say about that. And
Yeah, and I just want to say that this again is just a very preliminary overview, high-level overview of the culture and climate survey. We are going to get all of the data, and we're also going to be bringing in the building level administrators. My request came very late last week to see if we could get something together for tonight. And I appreciate your taking the time to put this together. I realize it's not encyclopedic. It is not complete. It doesn't have every question that was on there. But we will get all of that, and there will be ample time to discuss it with the building level administrators. So this is just the beginning, not the end of that process. Did you want to say something?
May I respond to Adrian's questions? So I do have the secondary staff, the students treat each other with respect. Last year it was 25%, 25.6%. This year it's 37.25. So still a long way to go, but definitely a huge jump. In terms of the students, it was not asked for the parents. It was worded differently where it wouldn't have been apples to apples. Yeah. In terms of students, sorry, I'm just. My peers treat me respectfully. I do not have last year's, I can grab it. It's not right on this one sheet, but for this year, the students reported 75.7% are treated respectfully by peers. So I just wanted to input that for you.
Okay, and we will get all that data. I think next was Matthew.
Thank you.
And then Jen.
One of the things that attracted me to run for the board was the fact that this district prides itself on being data-driven. And if it was data-driven in prior votes, I think we're on steroids this year about being data-driven. So I'm going to ask a favor of you as you work to, I'm going back, I didn't have a chance to ask, I'm under belonging, the very first chart. I like going to my school, 34 elementary, 34.6% is negative. First, I'd like you to disaggregate that between early years and the upper years. But the reason for it is not just the data. With 18.8% chronic absenteeism, we need to be able to identify where that's happening and who they are. I walk my dog about 9:30 in the morning. I'm sure everybody's very interested in that. And I came across a young lady who, towards the end of the summer, was just excited, so excited about going back to school. And she was on the street riding her bike at 9:30 in the morning. Said, "What are you doing?" Fill in the name. "Yeah, no school today?" "No, I told mom I didn't feel well." Well, she was riding her bike and looked as healthy as I've ever seen. I just left it at that. But if somebody who was enthusiastic 3 weeks before school started is ditching school, you can look at the data. I think I understand you to say you can look at the data. You can't tell us something, but you should be able to look at some of this data and really identify if there's a correlation between negative opinion in school and chronic absenteeism. And that maybe that can give us a tool to work on this problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jen?
So this gets more to the analysis side of the chart. So the staff respects all colleagues regardless of race, ethnicity, and culture, right? If you can help remind me, like, how diverse is our staff? This is important to me, right? Like, how diverse is our staff? And then the diverse staff, I just don't want them to be that percentage that is not satisfied. I know you can't answer because, like, it's supposed to be anonymous, but if I can just understand what's the diversity of our school district in terms of teachers and administration. This one's talking about culture, race, so it's not really all the other things that make somebody diverse and unique in their own right. So I just want to understand that. So yes, it does look good. But I just want to make sure the people in that orange aren't the people who are diverse. And then it really represents like 80% of them. And I don't know if we can get that
I don't know. how we track
information.
that.
I don't,
Anonymous.
yeah.
But it's a good point. It's a good point that you bring up.
54% like our students,
Mhm. Yeah.
you know.
And that's something that I was, like, I'm always interested in making sure that, like, as deviating now from our original topic, that as we're looking to hire, that there is always a diverse slate of candidates available in that pool.
Okay, Ian?
Thank you, Jay. I just wanted to circle back, when Lauren responded to Adrian's, or the graphs in question, the 37% figure, was so was that an increase? In negative responses?
No, that was positive responses. So it went from 25% feeling positive about it to 37%.
Well, that's definitely, that would, that would definitely be something I'd want to know. I mean, that's a great thing to know and to celebrate, because that, right? I mean,
For sure.
no, I need to, I mean, this is a problem. I need to kind of look at the chart while we're talking about it to be able to really understand to keep it all in context. Was that, what was the title of that 37% from 25 to 37? What was the title of that circle graph?
Lauren was looking at her raw data to try to give Adrian a little bit more information. It's not in this
Okay.
presentation.
Right, I understand that. I mean, I guess I'm trying to say, like, which graph, like the title of graphs that Adrian was referring to. There's one about, my
Yeah,
peers
I'm
treat me with
looking at it
respect.
right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so maybe Adrian can tell you what.
All right, it's under secondary school staff and it said students treat each other with respect. And last year was 25.6% and this year 37% of the staff feels that way.
So it's getting better, but it's not where we want it.
It's a
Got it.
50%.
All right. So yeah, I mean, that's a positive, right? I mean, that's
50% increase, as Dean said. So.
Do
I
at
mean-
least school students get
All how
access
you
to some
figure
of
it,
this
right?
information that they could possibly use internally? They're almost adults.
Yeah, they could be watching our meeting right now. I'm
Let's
sure
hope.
there are a lot of high school students that are.
Hundreds.
Wait, I guess I want to, My point is that, you know, having that, I mean, while the number's still not great, it's still, like, there's an upward tick there. So that's something like worth noting and saying like, well, now, you know,
I-
did something change? Did we do something? Was there something done in that school to try to, um, you know, foster a better environment of mutual respect amongst the students? I mean, that would be a curious line of conversation. That's all. And that's back to my.
That's what, that's why I'm looking forward to hearing from the building principals about this so that they can discuss their data and their ideas about why things went in one direction or the other. I was just responding to Matthew's comment, not yours, so. All right.
Okay, so wrapping up with professional development. The question that we asked the staff, and again, obviously the staff are the only stakeholder group that responded to this question, is whether or not the professional development that is provided directly related to their job. And we did see a slight increase at the elementary level. It went from 63% agreeing to 67.8% agreeing. Whereas at the secondary level, it almost, we had a huge increase. It went from 39% increasing to 60% increasing. And this is I would say can be a little tricky because sometimes even though we're offering PD that we believe relates to all of the teachers, there are, sometimes teachers that feel
They already knew it.
that they teach they teach a certain subject and, they don't really need, training in these other areas, or maybe they feel it's not their role, for whatever reason. But I do think there are some teachers that sometimes don't always see their role maybe in all of the professional development that's offered. But again, you can't make everyone happy with all of the PD. We have a limited amount of time. And unfortunately, we do have some mandates that we have to provide training in. So I can understand if staff don't always feel it relates to their job, but sometimes it's mandatory training that we just have to do.
I would say the more valuable data that we get on staff PD is just in time when we're surveying them right after they've had it. And they really do get specific in the questioning about every single part of their day. And that's really, and then their comments really
Mhm.
give us insight. When you do it over a whole year's time,
Mhm.
you don't get the level of data that we get for every TLI day. So we do that 8 times for every 3 days in the beginning of the year for the November and the March. We get, a dozen data samples
Mhm.
of PD, and that's more valuable than this 1 year.
Right. Right. So we did pick out some themes in terms of the comments that the teachers gave us regarding professional development. One of the themes was that teachers really they want their common planning time to be time that they can spend on some of our initiatives. And sometimes those meetings that crop up during their common planning time take away from that. So I think that's very valid. We also heard from a lot of people due to some of the responses we heard about student behavioral concerns, that there is still a need to provide trauma-informed practices, professional development, because that's really what we should be utilizing when we're working with students who have disruptive behavior. We also heard that from the teachers that they would like more training on the multi-tiered systems of supports, which is the new term for scientific research-based intervention or response to intervention models. And that is work that's happening in each of our buildings, but it is ongoing, because we're looking at not just academic interventions, but we're looking at social, emotional, and behavioral interventions. And then lastly, we did hear from some teachers that they'd like to see those magnet themes, specifically at the elementary level, integrated more throughout the school day, rather than just in isolated pockets during the week. And we thought that was really important information. And I think probably a goal for the principals as well. I think the challenge is just finding the time.
Yeah.
So we wanted to share with you some of the real impressive gains year over year. So the first gain, you can see in the peach color is last year's data, whereas the green is this year's, well, 2 years ago is the peach and last year is the green color bar. So in terms of the staff, the culture and climate in my school is positive. We saw a huge increase, and I will say a lot of the responses at the high school and the middle school level showed a nice positive trend this year. We also heard from the staff that building administration communicates well and informs staff of expectations. We saw a nice increase in that year to year. And then lastly, we were really pleased with the responses from parents regarding the district rollout of Parent Square, which happened across the district at all levels last year. So in terms of the secondary staff, we saw parents responding that they use Parent Square to communicate with their child's teacher. Almost 75% of the parents agreed with that. And then at the elementary level, we have from the students, we saw some nice gains, again, as we just touched upon, in books that have pictures of all kinds of people. We also saw big gains year over year from students saying that their teachers encourage them to learn about people from different races and ethnicities. And then the one we were really excited about was almost 100% of the elementary parents responded that they use Parent Square to communicate with teachers in their child's school, which is really, we were very pleased to see that. And then our takeaways. We're going to examine practices currently in place in order to make adjustments to improve survey completion, as we talked about a little bit at the beginning, so that we get more people completing the survey. Respect and inclusion is an ongoing focus. While significant gains have been made, we'll continue to work towards ensuring all students are seen, heard, and provided every opportunity to find their passion. While parents and guardians overwhelmingly agreed students were safe, safety will continue to be our priority. And again, Parent Square is proving to be a very effective way to engage parents, both from a school perspective and from a parent perspective. And that's it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And again, I know this is just a taste.
I'll get you more to chew on by Friday and look at.
And I'll entertain any last questions, starting with Ian.
Thank you, Jay. Just a quick, on those last two slides, the Parent Square communication, I mean, obviously, like Parent Square did not exist in the comparative year of 22 to 23. So it can't help but be a huge increase for Parent Square usage. I guess I would like to see some sort of comparative data as opposed to like other methods of communicating, say email, right? What percentage of parents prefer to use email versus Parent Square, or not even like, an either or, but like percentage that use email as a,
There
something
was
like-
there was a communications survey, and that's really why we adopted Parent Square, because it's very much the app parents can have on their phone, and that was really a response that many of the parents made, that they really like that technology on their phone.
And
Texting.
texting. They really like things that are kind of short and sweet and to the point.
But it's nice to know that this initiative that the district took on has been received so positively from parents. That's really what we're trying to showcase.
Agreed. Yeah. And it's good to hear. It's good to see. And having used Parent Square myself, over the past year, when it first came out, it's useful. It's good stuff. And I definitely appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And Jen?
two comments. Professional development and like how I know there's a slight improvement in some areas. Do you have a catalog of items that the teachers can select, like what sort of development they're interested in? So like they feel like they can contribute maybe at least 1 hour or 2 hours of the professional development day is something that they collectively as a whole selected. And obviously there's mandatory training that you guys are working on.
Yeah, the teachers do have opportunities to select
Mhm.
from a variety of sessions.
Okay,
Some days not.
okay.
You know, it really depends on what the district initiatives are,
Mhm.
but there have been opportunities for teachers to, to pick from kind of a menu of options.
I would also like to say that we're going to be showcasing our new educator support and evaluation plan. And a big part of that is choosing professional learning that goes with your goal. So
Mhm.
if I, want to get better at discussion questions and lifting student voice, I might want to go to a webinar. I might want to read a book. And so we want to build in that time. And we do that in TLI. We call it teacher collab time or teacher initiated. And it gives them a choice to work on their own goals in a specific way. And then they just really respond to it on the survey, what they had accomplished.
Mhm.
So that's a really important piece.
Okay. And then second, being a user of the Parent Square, I thought that the administration, at least at the high school level, did an amazing job communicating with parents from the principal to the athletic director and getting that information out. Unfortunately, I didn't have students at the younger level, so I'm not really sure what the communication was there, but excellent job of rolling it out. I wanted to give kudos to both Matt and Mark on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, thank you. Just for my notes, the staff survey regarding professional development, was that certified staff and non-certified staff, or is that just certified staff?
It was both.
Oh,
It's both. Okay. That'd be another opportunity for like a breakout, I guess, is having like, a certified and non-certified separated to see, how those populations are feeling, independently of each other. And just one quick last comment on the working on professional development initiatives. I definitely during common planning periods, I'm glad that was a takeaway from the note from their comments. Having more time to work on the initiatives and fewer meetings about the initiatives. Speaking as an educator myself, definitely sometimes the meetings can get a little tedious, and when you just need an hour or two to work on something and get it
I
done.
get that for sure. You're right about that.
All right. Thank you all for everything.
Thank
Yep.
you. I do want to get the people who are driving an hour
Yes.
plus home.
Yes.
So they
Thank you.
would
Please
all
don't
have to show
feel
up early.
Thank you.
like you need to stay for the rest of this. I'm not sure we're going to have time for Sam anyway, so.
Aw, Sam waited all through this.
We should have put you first.
No, that goes back to the time we had a meeting that went on for so many
Oh,
hours.
yeah.
That we forgot to
Sam.
recognize Sam. So
Oh, my.
that won't be tonight. All right.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, so
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
Mr. Tobin.
My report is a little bit longer than we were.
Oh, boy.
Oh,
No, no.
You better serve breakfast.
The elevator speed.
the elevator speed.
So, this year, the intent is to, I'm sorry. Thank you, Dean. This year, the intent is to get, the CIP request in, for the HVAC units at both Northeast Academy and Catherine Kolnaski. I still need to, and I'm working with Fuss and O'Neill, who gave us the original report that said that those units should be replaced over a period of years. And they need to help me update the pricing on that because the pricing is from 2009 or 2010. So
Before we go here, we got here in 2014. I thought we didn't put it on the list till about 2015.
did I say 10?
You said 9 and 10 and we weren't here.
Yeah, no, it would have been 14. It was my very first, at the end of my very first year. So my apologies for that. So at any rate, I'm working with them on updating the pricing on those units for those two schools. In the meantime, which may affect the pricing of what needs to be done at those two schools. I'm working with with Ray to get the RFQ out for the state testing of the HVAC systems. And we are going to start with testing both Northeast Academy and CK so that we have a better idea by the time this rolls around. So those are the two things. So we're hoping to get that. We're working on and anticipate getting that RFQ out this weekend into the newspaper. And it'll be in there for a couple of weeks. Meet with the groups that might be bidding the project and have the bids in within about a month, within 30 days anyway. So that's where we're at with that.
So there's a state grant that we're gonna go for, but that is contingent on the testing. Does the entire district have to be tested before?
No,
Okay, so but you do have to contract with someone to start the process, is that?
well, there are very few organizations or very few contractors that can do this work. And so they're actually giving waivers to school systems that that aren't able to get on in time, because some of this work needs to be done when the schools are empty. And if you're talking about air conditioning, for instance, you can't do that in February. You have to do that in the warmer weather. And then there are other parts that need to be done while actually kids are in school to check for the oxygen levels, those sorts of things within the classrooms later in the day, those sorts of things. So all that stuff needs to be done in two different formats. And so.
But I think in determining the grant, which is due by December, I think Northeast and CK, even though they're newer schools, we know that we have a problem with the HVAC and we're having to heat and air condition them at the same time, spring through fall. So I think it's really important that we keep that focus, and that's why the testing will happen. And if we do go for, I've heard from Senator Summers and Chris Conley and Andre Baumgartner, they're happy to write a letter, but it would have to be the kind of reimbursement grant that the town would have to support the layout of those funds, but then it would be reimbursable. So.
But, so you're saying that we'd have to get the CIPs for this approved outside of the normal budget cycle in order to apply for the grant in December?
No, I don't think so.
Well, don't we have to let the town know that, or they have to commit to funding the project?
Well, we would have,
To get the
well,
reimbursement.
in order to get the reimbursement, you have to apply for the grant. So you apply through the grant, for the grant through the construction organization at the state. And in order to do that, in order to apply for that, one of the requirements is that the town agrees to pay the full amount of whatever the grant would be, 100% of it. However, you're still reimbursed whatever the rate is, the going rate is for the town for that particular item. Generally speaking, Groton has always been in the 50% range. Sometimes we've ranged up closer to 60%. There have been other times when we've been in the lower 50%, lower end of the 50%. But so it depends upon what type of project it is. The state has different levels of reimbursement for it. So
I'm just confused about how we're gonna get that time. I mean, can you apply in December contingent upon the town going through its normal CIP process?
I'm not,
You would just have to say we're committing. And that's all you need.
No, first of all, you'll have to, the board will have to support it and send us on to the town council. Town council actually has to take a vote on it.
I'm just concerned about the timing. If the grant has to be applied for in December, the timing of getting the town council and the RTM, right?
Right.
Commit.
I know that they very much wanted us to go for the grant. I was asked, why didn't you go for it?
Exactly,
a
I
year
remember.
before? And actually I said, because you needed to commit to that amount of money and there wasn't the commitment. So I think if we do it, we have to get this moving forward and that's all the stars line up.
So they would need to have it by probably like the beginning of November to have time to.
That's what I'm wondering.
So is it possible to get all your stuff done by then?
With all of the with all of the state construction grants that we've done in the past, we've been able to put them together in the fall and go up there just before the new year so that it happens. Usually the grants are released. We've gotten them right after the new year. So we generally have the fall to get it done.
I'm just gonna, Ian actually had his hand up, so I'm gonna recognize Ian and then I'll come back to you. Ian.
Thank you. Yeah, so all these questions are kind of circling around my main question, which is, when is the deadline for submission of this, for the grant? And that's for one, and two, well, let me just get an answer to that, and then I'll follow up if needed. When is the deadline for us to submit?
I don't,
Mid-December. I think it's mid-December is what Shannon had said. I don't know the specific date, but.
I would like to, is that in writing anywhere? Is that on a website? We need a date?
Shannon told me she is the one who's the grant writer and she investigates the grants.
Okay, can be sent around an email, the firm date of deadline,
I can find that out. Yep,
and send it around?
yep.
Okay. Because the other concern I have, we kind of went through this, it seems like we've been kind of circling around this every year. And it seems like the timing is never quite there. And we also have this debate over town support. And I understand like it's a two-part situation. But, if the deadline's in mid-December, the town council doesn't do their budgeting, as we know, until like March or April of the next year. So, I mean, maybe we're already behind the curve on this one. The time to have the conversation would have been, prior to the last budget cycle to be prepared for this moment. So the town would, already have, allotted some money for that on the side, whatever our best case scenario of an outcome would be. They have the money set aside for that. And so that'd be the second point is it may already be too late, is my concern. And third, I'm just gonna advocate that, whatever we do, like, we back it up with a MOA, a very clearly written memorandum of agreement between the town and the board of whatever we're gonna partner up on. Thank you.
Well, I think the state needs to see a CIP. Approved and funded, right? Maybe Shannon could give us more details about exactly what they need as a prerequisite.
the state would, I don't, no, the state wouldn't necessarily have to see it as a CIP. The funding just needs to be approved by the town in full. So whether it was done through the CIP process and then we apply for the grant when that comes up. And then we would essentially supplant that money based on that, on getting the grant after the fact. In other words, the town would approve the CIP. If they did approve the CIP, if we got the grant in January, then the town would just, that money had already been allotted for it. We could use that money to send on to the state office to for that grant.
Yeah, so the steps, I guess to to go backwards and now go forward, what are the steps that need to happen? So we're waiting for pricing. And once we have that from the engineers, then we go out to bid. And once we have some hard bid numbers, then we can apply. Then we go to the town. Would that be the way?
Well, we're talking about two different things here.
All right, sorry.
We're talking about, that's all right. We're talking about CIP request. That's one thing. And I need to update the numbers that we've applied, we've requested this money of the town council on a couple of other occasions regarding the HVAC at those schools. We haven't received it yet. It's been a long time since we had those numbers. I updated them a couple of years ago, I believe, but I think it's time again, once again, to update those numbers before I go to the town, because I don't want to get when we go out to bid, I don't want the bid to come in higher than what we're asking the town for. We want to be reasonable about it and have it within a certain range. So I got to get updated pricing from Buss and O'Neill, who were the original organization that put this request together for us. So that's regarding the CIP. When it comes to the state grant for HVAC, that's separate. That's with the state construction grant office. OSCGR, yes, that's what it is, OSCGR. All of the grants, whether they are asbestos grants or any other grants, roofing grants and stuff that we've gotten over the years, we've been able to put together in the fall and submit them before the new year. And then they you generally come back with their answer in the early part of the new year. So if the town approves the CIP, then that money is set essentially, you can look at it as having been set aside, and then we wouldn't have to go back and ask them for that money again. It's already been allotted. So I think it kills two birds with one stone, I think, if we can get them to approve it first. If not, then when we apply to the state for the grant, then the town would still have to authorize the spending of that. They would have to authorize and say that they would spend that full amount of money in order to get the project done, even though we're going to get reimbursed at the end. The town actually pays all the bills right up to the end, and then they get their percentage reimbursement after the project is completed and an audit is done.
All right.
Did I confuse you enough?
I think I got it.
This is so far out of my area of familiarity with ask a dumb question. Just be tolerant and smile at me. He's good at that. I appreciate it. What I hear the group asking for is a draft timeline or a PERT chart that states out all the waypoints along so that we have an idea of where you hope to be at certain points. Now, a draft, they use the word draft because things could change. And it's not something that we're going to hold you to, but give us some kind of sense of what the waypoints are along the way and when you hope at this moment in time to reach each waypoint. Is that reasonable?
Yes, I think so, yes.
Is that something we can do?
We can put something together.
Thank you.
There's no furniture again.
Is this something that maybe Jay, you and Susan can talk to John Burt about to see if there's any interest? I'd hate for Sam to do all this work and then somebody's like, yeah, no, go away. We're not gonna fund
I was gonna
anything.
ask Susan during her meetings with John to bring this up and understand what how it works together. This is not a brand new grant, so I think
Mhm.
that the town is familiar with it, so. All right, thank you, Sam. Any other questions, concerns? No.
Right, and I had asked you, but I'm not changing.
All right, so if there's nothing else, thank you, Sam. We're gonna go to the referral track issue.
Just real quick, Jay, sorry, yeah, I just wanted to say, like, with those meetings, I mean, remember, like, John Burt is just a town manager, like, he doesn't speak for the whole council. He can give us a sense of what they're thinking, maybe,
exactly.
we
Yeah.
want to be clear about our communications.
Yes.
Thank you. And of course, documented in some fashion, memorialized in an email.
All right, so we are trying to chip away at the referral tracking sheet. I don't know how much,
We've taken off some of these things though, that
Yeah.
could be taken off.
yeah,
Well,
like the
before
one
we call our
card,
meetings.
collaboration.
Yeah, I was going to
That's been,
I think we
taken
can
care
take
of,
that
right?
one off and
Cursive writing, for example, has already been mandated by the state. So anyway.
To do it or not do it?
It's already a state mandate, yeah.
Oh.
Last year's legislature, right? I think it's at the State Department of Ed now for
Yeah.
how it's gonna be rolled out.
Roll out.
So. I mean, we can still talk about it if somebody wants to talk about it, but actually that probably would go more into curriculum, I would think, start there.
I did ask Mark Romano about not charging seniors 65 or older, and he says they are like, get student prices, so they're like half price, and he also has a family package that he does where people, buy two, each you get two free for the whole series of events. So he's got other ways that they do discount.
Thank you, Sam.
So I think that's the best he said he could do at this point, because it does help support boosters and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I'll make sure that that is fine with Bev. So is there anything that we want to add to the referral list? I heard Ian earlier.
two things. I thought one was on. I'd made a request earlier for curriculum to give us an update on financial literacy, and that doesn't seem to be on the list.
Under curriculum,
Or if you think it should go somewhere else, that's fine, but that,
but I think it should start there, right? Financial literacy. And again, isn't that a state mandate?
Yes. it
oh,
is.
it's a statement, there is a state mandate.
Is there a model curriculum yet? Or is that one of those things where
I don't know the answer to that question,
so maybe
but
that's
I know it's been,
curriculum can
oh,
do that.
I believe it's been referred through curriculum committee and through the faculty.
They have had a presentation. Yeah, but I don't know if it needs to come to the COW too. The curriculum has had the high school present their personal finance, moving over to financial literacy.
Okay.
My concern,
That kids are all taking now.
my concern is that I know we have a number of that we had even before I made the referral, a number of financial literacy elements in place. But it was not what I would have called at that time an integrated plan of how we're going to phase financial literacy throughout the, probably not K-12, but certainly 4 through 12 or 5 through 12 curriculum.
Okay,
So
so
kids
at
are
this
building-
point, we don't discuss the in-depth, the referrals. What we do is we make the referral and we can get an update on
That's-
how
that's
the
all I want.
state mandate is affecting our curriculum, which you've already reviewed. Maybe you could do a report to us on what you came up with.
And what we have, where we are, where we were, where we are, and how the state, those things. Thank you very, very much.
Okay.
And the other one I was going to ask, I don't know if this should be added or not, but we were talking about through Nick's presentation, the business of dashboards and communication. I can get you the samples from this one institution, but many institutions of many types use this thing in industry, et cetera, so that it encourages people to track their goals and progress.
Yeah, and I think there was consensus on that.
So do we want to have that as an item?
Yeah, we can certainly put it on there, and I think
Would that be under communication or you want somewhere else?
no, the whole board should talk about that.
Okay,
I think Lauren's working on a dashboard
that's fine.
proposal.
So I should
And I'm
get the
gonna
stuff to Lauren
recognize,
too.
Ian and then Adrian.
Thank you. Yep. So, Jay, you said you had notes from earlier, the referrals I threw out there verbally. Do you want to just recap those and so we can confirm on? I said, basically, I was looking for a referral where we can discuss the data details that we'd like to have and like vote as a board on what we want to see. And also consistent trackers for the presentation. And I may be taking this out of somebody else's pocket, but review of the survey questions prior to the survey going out. just so we understand what the questions are that are being asked of, and again, I just want to have those in there as a COW, I think, just to get a sense. And if it's something we want to advance to a regular meeting to empower with a vote, I think that'd be another thing we could discuss during a cow with those agenda items. So I'm just gonna take a pause there and see if that came through clearly.
Yeah, so you want to discuss the data details and consistent trackers with regard to the climate base.
Climate survey, yeah.
And
And
again, I
Like, you know, that, I think that would be with all surveys, honestly. I think we should kind of like, you know, because we did a software survey and various other surveys, you know, we want to kind of broaden the scope on that. And so we can
So-
just all at once and be done with it, yeah.
And I just want to say that once we get information from Connecticut State Department of Ed on these model surveys, we'll bring it to you to take a look at
All right,
because the
and let you know what the committee has decided. We might go with the way they've done it, the model curriculum, you know, and keep it consistent. So
all right.
because
And,
they're update that.
sorry, did you get that, Jay? We're good?
Yes. Yep.
And also, in regards to a curriculum committee referral, I think it'd be good to have a discussion about, honors classes, beyond the 10th grade. Maybe a way to assess like desire and results for that, or, you know, best practices in other districts. Just to get some clarity and, have board input on that. And then also, the transplant map that that I asked for a while back. You know, I've been given some timelines, loose timelines about when it would be coming out, but like, you know, that's maybe something, I mean, am I just the lone voice on that? I'd like to kind of put it before the board, see where everyone is on getting a good understanding of what I'm asking for, and if it's something that the board would like to see produced.
that project was additional work from the scope that we first identified. We were very interested in it, but it had a price tag last year when I couldn't take on one more thing. So it's something we can absolutely look at this year, and I can get in touch with them and, you know, cost it out again and let the board decide if that's something you want to tackle.
Sure, yeah, and I think, you know, by putting it in the referral list and, you know, scheduling it for an agenda item to discuss, that would give everyone time to prepare, get the research done that's needed, and we can discuss it as a board and come up with a group decision on that one way or the other.
Yeah. I'll
And,
reach out.
thank you for that. And one other, thing, just looking at the referral list, there are some things we can eliminate. The non-lapsing fund, was something we did accomplish, so that one's done. And also the referral, to have all committee and subcommittee, meetings recorded and published. That also, we've accomplished that as well.
Yep.
All right, thank you all. Well, thank
Okay.
you for that. Thank you.
I just have a modification to an old one that I made, if we could. Cause it's 2024-10, just the board's interest in drafting a policy regarding family notification of standardized tests. What we were talking about, and that was Dibble's test, which I don't think, are those considered standardized tests?
They are, but they're not like the state tests. So we do notify people of the state test, and I believe that we notify them that the kids are taking the dibbles 3 times a year, and then we notify them with the results.
All
We
right.
just have to find out.
So maybe can we just modify that so it says family notification of testing data, or maybe family and board notification of testing data? And then at that point, we can decide if we think there needs to be a policy, rather than writing it in this complicated way.
Okay.
Dean,
What are we missing?
Oh, you're not missing anything. Well, yeah, there are many things I could say, but I won't. Going to electric school buses. That hasn't been discussed for a while, but I think the It's the idea of spending $20 million to acquire a fleet of buses. That's,
Well, there is a district that STA is working with.
Griswold, they got one bus.
They can't make it work.
We did get STA here, remember at one time when so maybe interested in getting an update on that.
We don't need to be a leader in this. We could be a follower. Wait to see like another district, like have it be successful.
For our, because.
Yeah,
the
no.
reason why we only get 2 bids for our school buses, and that's
Yeah.
because there are only 2 companies that are capable of providing the number of buses that we use. If we to acquire our own fleet,
Mm.
I can think of 1,000 other ways to spend that money.
Yeah.
But we can talk about it. We can have it on the list and keep it on there. It just seems
Let's see what Griswold does.
futile.
Yeah.
Um,
And wait and see is the best for that one.
So in terms of next week's meeting, I'm just curious whether anyone would have any interest in having a discussion about adding to the scope of the operational review that the council has now approved. Personally, I would still like to see them look at the permanent staffing levels in there in the business office and provide some additional support, maybe to keep Ray on. So these are some things I'd like to bring up next week if there's consensus to bring it up.
I'm in full favor of that, Jay. I think you were talking about as an agenda item for next week where we could discuss it and possibly on an action if we so desire.
Yes,
Yeah.
I want to put that on the main meeting. And I know it's redundant, but I just want, I would just like us to, as Dr. Goodyear used to say, think deep thoughts about that in ways that can make that more instructive. And then also, just as a board, just go on record that it would be helpful to start in January once the new business manager has had time to acclimate. I just want to go on record for that. So, anything else for referrals?
Sorry, just a quick question, Jay. So, I didn't really get a read of the room on that. Are we going to discuss that agenda item, the scope of, the review and, possible requests for the council?
I haven't heard any objections, so, but I will recognize Mike.
I couldn't quite hear you. Did you recognize me?
Yes, I'm sorry, I did.
Okay, thank you. Just in referrals, when we were in a recent curriculum committee meeting, we weren't sure if we could refer stuff in the committee or if it comes from here. I think it comes from here. And one topic we brought up was just special education in general, just like as curriculum to pay attention to the special education offerings and programs through the school system.
Okay.
Oh, Jay.
Yes, Jen.
So.
Thank you, Mike. Was there anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So the ad hoc naming committee, I asked Joyce to put it on the agenda, but do I need to ask for it here so that it can go to the agenda for next Monday?
No, actually, that is already on the agenda.
Okay, perfect. I wasn't sure, like, if I missed
You
a
could just
step.
be prepared to sort of give a little report on it.
Perfect.
All right. If there's nothing else, there's a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a second? Second from Matthew. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you, everybody.